Okay, I'm in. Ooh, I gotta figure out the next week. I should be good. It's the next 2 weeks that are gonna be weird. Are you in?
Yeah. It says one waiting.
Somebody just left.
Well, maybe I should go out and come back in because it's not. Hang on a second. Well, that's not right. Okay, I'm gonna. Hang on a second. I'm gonna go out and go back in. There we go. All right. There right.
I don't think so. Oh, there you are.
Okay, so I will hang up so we are not talking over each other.
Okay. Okay. So, a lot of stuff to go over today. So, pay attention. Wait, that's not what I want. This was supposed to be done Tuesday, and it wasn't. So we're going to go over it today because life got in the way of stuff, so. We didn't have any videos last week, apparently. Oh, wait. That's the wrong one. Okay. So we are at 332 subscribers as of today. Which is very cool. I want to say thank you to the new subscribers. And we're going to do weekly recap. 11 videos, 7 shorts, 17 live streams, and 5 posts. I really think they're confusing me with somebody else because didn't do 17 live streams. We passed 300 subscribers, which we knew that already. We had people watch. Oh, wait, that's not. It's not what I wanted. Okay. We had 3 videos last week, 7 shorts, 3 live streams. 1.6 thousand people turned in. We had 9 new subscribers. 3 videos were watched: Whale Tales, Organism of the Week, Giant Squid, and 2 groups of whales. I had 11 likes, 11 shares, and 1 comment. The most watched video last week was Whale Tales. It had 689 views last week. Guys, find a different video to watch. Okay. let's talk about lives real quick, because I need to. So this week we are doing polar creatures, and then Friday we are doing Arctic conditions, talking about the ecosystem. Next week we're doing game day. We're doing 2 games: Guess the Ecosystem and Hibernate or Not. It is the following week that's going to be a little bit weird. The 22nd and the 29th, I may end up babysitting, which means that Tuesday's live may have to be later. But I'll figure that out. For now, unless there's anything else I need to cover, let's get into today's live. Now, again, it's a little bit short, but it's still going to be cool. Today we are looking at animals that live in both the Arctic and the Antarctic. Now, it's important to note that Antarctica does not have large animals that live on the continent. And we'll cover those. They do have some large oceanic mammals. I may have to dig for that information a little bit. So we will be looking at quite a collection of random animals. So let's get into today's live. We're going to be looking at adaptations, and then we'll talk a little bit about some other facts. We're also going to be alternating between Arctic and Antarctic animals. First up is the polar bear. So polar bears are built to survive in the Arctic. A fact that really is good for them, I guess. Let's talk about the fur first, because that's the most amazing part of this. Like the muskox that we talked about last week or this week, whatever week it was, the polar bear has 2 layers of fur. One that is really thick and fuzzy, sort of like a warm Christmas sweater. And the second layer acts like a raincoat. Now, their fur actually traps heat. And it'll keep them warm even down to negative 40 degrees Fahrenheit. Now, their fur is not white. Did you know that? They have fur that actually traps pigments. Oh, that's not right. It lacks pigments. The bear's skin is actually black. And we think that's to help absorb light. Now, light, if you don't know, the light waves carry light, but they also carry heat. So, also helping to keep them warm. The bears have 2 fat layers that help to insulate them, and their fat can be almost 4.5 inches thick. And that fat keeps them warm, especially when they're in the water, because their hair does not do that. They have an amazing sense of smell. In fact, they can smell a seal under the ice. I think they can smell a baby seal in the den, which is often under the snow, from 3 feet away, something like that. They can also smell a breathing hole from at least a half mile away. Now, they also have fur on the feet, and this does 2 things. One, it quiets the noise that they make when they're walking, and it also helps to keep the bears from slipping on the ice. Next up is the emperor penguin. Now, before I go any further, I need to address an issue, a small issue. There are no penguins that live in the North Pole, despite what your children might see on Christmas cartoons. With that said, let's look at this animal. This animal is listed as near threatened, and the population trend is on the decrease. Emperor penguins are from Antarctica, and they are adapted to withstand temperatures that can drop to negative 58 degrees Fahrenheit, and winds that can blow at speeds that would exceed 124 miles per hour. Now, going to help you out a little bit. If you take that negative 58 degrees and that 124 mile per hour wind, that would be a negative 129 wind chill. So that is very cold. They have an outer layer that keeps air trapped between the skin and the feathers, or the feathers and the skin. They also have the feathers are also short, stiff, and interlock. And again, that helps to keep the air trapped. That last layer of feathers is a layer of downy feathers, and those help to insulate them. They also have smaller beaks than other penguins and smaller flippers, and that helps to reduce heat loss. They also have special fats in their feet that keep their feet from freezing. And they also have sharp claws that grab the ice. Not grab the ice, but grip the ice. And like many other polar creatures, they also have a layer of blubber that helps to insulate them when they're in the water. Next up is one of my favorite Arctic animals. That is the Arctic fox. Now, their population is considered to be of least concern, and their population at this point is stable. Now, this is an Arctic predator, but it's also a scavenger. They will follow polar bears as they hunt, looking for scraps. Now, you may notice that they have smaller ears than other foxes, and that helps to minimize heat loss. They also have a shorter snout, which may also help with reducing heat loss, which I just said. So smaller ears and a shorter snout helps them. During the winter, these foxes will have a white coat, and that's to help camouflage them from prey or predator. During the summer, they're going to switch to a gray or bluish brown coat, and again, that is to help provide camouflage. They do have a thicker tail than other foxes, and this is to help them wrap that tail around their body to help keep them warm. Also, like the polar bear, if I can get my fingers to work, they have thick fur on their paws to insulate them to help keep their feet a little bit warm. It also gives them a grip on the ice, and the paws are actually kept purposely at a lower temp, and this reduces heat loss through the paws. They also dig burrows into the snow during bad weather, and this takes the edge off of the cold, even though it's still cold inside the burrow. Next up, we have the Weddell seal. This is a species of least concern, and it comes from Antarctica. Now, these guys will use their teeth to actually chew breathing holes into the ice. Before diving, they actually exhale, which causes their air passages to basically collapse. And this is a good thing because this keeps them from getting the bends when they deep dive. Now, they can carry 1.6 times more oxygen than human blood. Their milk is one of the richest of any mammal's milk. It is 60% fat, which allows the young to grow fast in the short Antarctic summer. It's, by the way, summers in Antarctica are from October to February. The embryo goes into sort of a hibernation of sorts. It's delayed. Basically, it stops development at a certain point and then starts up again, which allows the seals to be born at the correct time. The snowy owl, back to the Arctic. These guys are vulnerable, and its population, unfortunately, is dropping. Now, these guys do not nest in trees, they nest on the ground. And they're also unique in another way. These owls hunt during the day. The owl's dense body feathers help to insulate their bodies, and they have way more feathers than other North American owls. They have very thick feathers that help cover up the toes and the legs to help block Arctic winds. Now, the next animal that I want to talk about is the skua. And this is a species that lives in the Antarctica. However, during the winter, sorry, I blinked. They fly off north, have even been found as far north as Greenland. Now, these guys feed on fish, but they will also harass other seabirds into giving up their meals. And they are known to feed on penguins, primarily the eggs and the chicks, but they will also scavenge off of carcasses. And they actually are one of the few animals that nest on the continental Antarctica. Now, when I say the continent, there's a lot of sea ice around Antarctica, and a lot of penguins will nest on that sea ice. Believe it or not, next up, by the way, we're talking about the narwhal. And this is a whale that, along with the beluga and I think the bowhead whale, where they actually do not have a dorsal fin. That's the fin on the back. That is to help them move through the water better. They, believe it or not, these whales can carry 18 and a half gallons of oxygen, which I've never heard it referred to that way with gases, but okay. And they can carry 18 and a half gallons of oxygen in their blood, lungs, and muscles. So, pretty cool. They also exhale before diving, and this helps to limit decompression sickness, which I think is the same thing as the bends. And they can do dives of 2,600 feet. Their tusks are pretty. Their tusks are also pretty amazing. They can actually help the animal pick up the sonar better through holes that are actually in the tusk. Now, for those of you who don't know, the South Pole is actually a hot spot for whales. And not just the orcas, which hunt seals down there, but there are also whales that frequent Antarctica.
I'm in, Mom.
And those whales actually include quite a few whales that we're going to be looking at in just a second. And I'm just going to cover all the whales. I'm not going to be doing individual species. We first have killer whales, and these guys are down there. They're going to be feeding on things like seals and other whales and penguins. Sperm whales actually visit Antarctica, or at least the waters, and they're going to be feeding on fish and squid. Humpback whales are going to be down there, and they're going to be feeding on a lot of krill, which is a type of shrimp. Sorry. And they're also going to be feeding on small fish and plankton. I don't know why.
GD and 8.
There's also blue whale that live down there. And these animals may not be there year-round. But you can go down there, and they do have excursions that take you out so you can see them, which is pretty cool. I would love to do that someday, but probably not going to happen. So that's definitely I don't know what's going on.
I wonder why that screw keeps coming loose.
Huh?
So I wonder why the screw keeps coming loose.
Is it a Phillip?
I don't know what it is. It's up underneath.
Okay, next up, we're going to travel to the Arctic.
GD.
And there are more whales, but we'll have to come back to them.
There's two things. One of them's lost its screw totally. And right now I don't see it.
So things that help the reindeer survive is their fur. And that just helps them stay warm. The hooves are a little bit unique. They actually have fur on the bottom of their hooves. And like the other three mammals from the Arctic that we've looked at,
Shared this with the family group.
it also keeps
Do you know
them
that?
from slipping on the ice.
I don't. It doesn't even have to be shared with the family group. It can be shared
Now
with
their hooves are
She is a
also
relative,
very
right?
big and very broad. And this helps them
She is the sister
actually
of a
paddle
grandma, really.
in rivers and lakes, and they do swim quite well.
Sister-in-law.
My third great grand uncle is Henry Stanworth. His wife is Isabella.
So next up,
Hannah is Isabella's sister.
Okay. So you want me to just release her?
Just release her.
let's talk about blue whales in Antarctica.
And I made note on the card.
Now this is considered, even though we know they're one of the biggest animals, these guys are considered to be the biggest of the blue whales. I'm assuming it might be considered a subspecies. But a lot of these facts are going to probably going to basically be the same for other blue whales. So kind of take that into your remembrance. So these are the biggest animals on the planet, weighing up to a whopping 400,000 pounds. That's about approximately 33 elephants. So pretty big there.
Yeah, she's really.
These guys are going to be
you need
eating
any-
79,000 pounds of krill a day.
There's tons of them, I should tell you.
And they're also one of the largest or one of the loudest animals on the planet. Their calls can reach 188 decibels. That is louder than a jet.
Male, female, coupled.
So you have couples.
The Antarctic blue whale is critically endangered. Unfortunately,
Yeah.
commercial whaling
Yeah.
started in Antarctica or in the southern Atlantic Ocean in 1904. And despite legal protection, they were still hunted up through, I think, the 1960s. In 1926, there were 125,000 individuals. In 2018, oh wait, I read that wrong. Sorry. In 1926, there were 125,000 individuals. Those numbers were reduced to 3,000 individuals, and they are now classified as critically endangered. So, definitely an issue there. But they are very slowly making a comeback. So that's really cool. There are whales that live in the Antarctic or in the Arctic. A lot of those animals are migratory, which I thought I talked about, but can't find. So next up, we're bouncing back to the Arctic, and we're going to be looking at the bowhead whale, which is probably the most interesting of the whales in my book. Now, these guys, they don't look like your typical whale, to be honest. And we are going to be looking at these guys, I think, next week. Possibly this week, but more likely next week. So, one thing that you'll notice immediately about these guys, as well as the narwhal and the beluga, is they don't have a dorsal fin. And that is important because a dorsal fin would just get in the way. They would not be able to swim underneath the ice with a dorsal fin. So, pretty important. These guys are going to measure around 65 feet. And these guys are unique in that they pretty much are going to spend their entire lives in and around Arctic waters. So, pretty important there. They may migrate a little bit here and there. Yeah. They do migrate northward in the spring and south in the fall. But for the most part, these guys are going to be found around the edges of the pack ice. These are a baleen whale like the humpback and the blue whale, basically using their mouths to open up, fill up with water, and then they close their mouths a little bit, and then they push the water out, and that allows them to push water out, and they're able to feed. Other really cool features about these guys, they their blubber is pretty thick. They have about 1.5 feet of blubber. And again, that keeps them from basically dying, getting too cold. They also have something unique. Their blowhole, which is how they take in air and exhale, is actually elevated. So what they can do is they can find a hole in the ice. They can go in, stick their blowhole through that hole in the ice, and they can get a breath. They also are going to use their heads, which is a pretty big head, and they're going to use that to actually break up the ice a little bit. Now, since I mentioned their head, their skull is actually 16.5 feet long. It's about a third of the whale's head, or it's about a third of the body length. Let's see. These guys are protected under both the Endangered Species Act and the Marine Mammal Protection Act. So that's pretty important to know. I do believe that these guys so they can actually break through ice or sea ice that is 2 feet thick, have been reported. Now, it's also important to note that these guys are legally hunted by the natives of the Arctic within North America. They are allowed to hunt for subsistence. 12% of the Western Arctic, I say way too much, guys. About 12% of the Western Arctic bowheads have scars from entanglements. And basically what that means is they have come into contact with fishing gear of many different types, nets, whatever, and they get entangled in it. And at least 12% of the animals that they find in the Western Arctic show signs of entanglements. And they're pretty sure that some of the whales actually die before they can be helped. And they may drag these lines or nets around for quite a while. So that's a little bit about them. Bouncing back to the Arctic, or to the Antarctic, rather. We are going to look at my favorite seal. Do you know what it is? Can you guess? Can you guess? We are going to be talking about the leopard seal. Now, these guys live on the Antarctic Peninsula and around sub-Antarctic islands. So they're not, basically not all over the place in Antarctica, but these guys are a major predator. One of the questions that I see a lot Are these guys dangerous to humans? And the answer is yes. They are more than capable of taking out a human. I don't know if they ever have, but they are bigger than any of the big cats and are heavier than most bears. So there you go. Out of the water, they're going to be pretty easy for you to get away from. In the water, however, it would be very easy for them to do so, to escape. The good news is typically people are not on the menu and they really don't see a lot of humans. However, there have been times when people have been, we see a little bit of that aggression. A lot of times, though, they're curious about us. And the good news is there's only been one person killed but if you're in the water with them, you definitely need to be careful because they are a predator. There have been occasions when these guys will bring gifts to humans, usually in the form of penguins. And penguins do make up a fair bit of their diet. These guys are basically solitary animals. You will find them on the pack ice. Just to give you, oh, they don't give it in. Okay. Natural predators for these guys, believe it or not, is the killer whale. Other animals they're going to basically perceive as a snack. They have been found actually in the southern part of the Great Barrier Reef, so they do sort of bounce back and forth. They have a 9-month gestation period. They will take, let's see, what will they eat? They will eat fish, penguins, squid, crustaceans. They will take krill, the pups of crab eater seals, Weddell seals, southern fur seals, and they actually had a leopard seal that was captured near Sydney, Australia, and it had actually eaten a full-grown platypus. So they have quite the diet. I would say. Looking at the time. Okay. Just so you know, Friday's live, we are not really going to be looking at the animals so much as we are conditions in and around the Arctic. So let's talk a little bit about Arctic wolves. So these guys are basically wolves that live in the Arctic. So we're mainly interested in not so much a lot of the other stuff. This is not a separate species from what we see in Yellowstone. Instead, this is a subspecies. And you basically find them above 67 degrees north latitude. You're going to find these guys at the North Pole. You're going to find them in eastern Greenland or along the eastern and northern shores of Greenland. Fun fact, my dad was stationed in Greenland for a while. So these guys are going to have huge territories, mainly because food is going to be pretty spread out across it. I would have to look into Siberia. That I don't know. These guys are going to feed on caribou and musk oxen. They're also going to be eating smaller prey like Arctic hares, ptarmigan, which is a bird, lemmings, and other small animals, including nesting birds. And there are a lot of birds that nest in the Arctic. Unlike their native, unlike the wolves in Yellowstone, the wolves in the Arctic have a difficult time digging dens because of permafrost. So think of permafrost as basically frozen soil. So there, they are going to be using rock outcrops, caves if they can find them, depressions in the tundra soil, and that's going to be the den. Now, these pups are born just like any other dog. They're going to be born blind and deaf. They do have fuzzy dark hair when they're born, droopy eyes or droopy ears, and a blunt snout, I believe. So a little bit different than what we have perhaps on wolves. These guys they live in packs, and everybody is going to be there to help take care of the pack, of the pups. The whole pack, just not mom or dad, everybody. There is always one adult with the pups when everybody else is out hunting. We are not going to be discussing the howls because we can talk about that at a later time. They do, like all animals, like all dogs, they do mark their territories. Oh, sorry. Younger members of the pack actually help out with the pups and also with protecting older wolves. So everybody is taken care of. Now, they do live in pretty harsh conditions, and so hunting together as a pack is key to their survival. So, a lot of hunting there. Now, success rate, because this is a thing. Predators don't always kill every animal that they chase. These guys are going to only kill one of every 10 large mammals that they chase. Now, these guys are going to be eating everything. The bones, the meat, everything gets ate. So, they may not hunt. They may not hunt as a pack when hunting smaller animals like the hares and whatnot. They do have something a little bit different. These guys are going to have white fur, and that helps them to basically be camouflaged. They also have smaller ears, and their ears are rounded. The muzzle is also shorter, and the fur is denser than other wolves. You'll also find that the legs are shorter than in other subspecies. And like the reindeer and the polar bear and the Arctic fox, they also have hairs between the pads of their feet. Now, they do have a natural enemy, and that natural enemy is the polar bear. So that's a little bit about the Arctic wolf. Moving on from there, we're going to talk about, I don't know, something. Okay, we're going to start by talking about the Adelie penguins. Now, something you may not know is that there are only 5 penguins that actually nest on the continent itself. Adelies are one of them. Now, these guys were first discovered in 1840 by a French Antarctic expedition. They're not one of the biggest penguins, but they are known to walk on the ice. And I'm sorry I don't have this converted for you. They can walk on their walking speed on the ice is about 2.5 kilometers an hour, and swimming speeds are 4 to 8 kilometers. These guys are closely related to the gentoo penguins and the chinstrap penguins. They are one of 5 species of penguins that actually live on the continent itself. So those include the Adelie, the emperor, the gentoo, chinstrap, and the macaroni penguins. They will also live on small islands, and they tend to nest on exposed rocks when they can. Now, they do have a large population on Windmill Island or islands, and this is home to the 3rd largest Adelie population in East Antarctica. In the 1950s, that colony contained 30,000 breeding pairs. Nowadays, it has dropped by about 100, and it is now nearly 200,000 breeding pairs. We don't really know what they do during the winter. They probably spend it out on the pack ice, and we're trying to figure out where they do go. These guys are going to be mainly predators for the leopard seal and the skuas, who will take eggs and chicks. These guys are going to be feeding on fish, amphipods, and krill. Feeding trips for these guys, for the adults, range from 5 to 72 hours. So pretty cool in that regards. I'm not going to cover musk oxen today because you can look that up on the channel. How is everybody doing? I did not ask that question, and I should have. Next up, we actually have an animal that you wouldn't think of being an Arctic animal, but the beaver actually lives in parts of the Arctic.
I think the mail came because I see the truck on the other street.
So that's pretty cool that they're spreading, maybe. I did not realize that they did that, but that's okay. Next up, we're going to be talking about the Arctic ground squirrel. These guys are a ground squirrel. They're the largest of the North American ground squirrels.
I cooked one of the pot pies with the pie.
Yeah.
That's a beef one.
Which one?
These guys are going to go through periods where they go through shifts and weights based upon hibernation.
I didn't put any of the pot pies.
They are sexual dimorphic, meaning that there is differences between the males and the females. Males tend to be larger than the females.
You had two
Again,
2 liters of water in the freezer.
Yeah.
I didn't give you those.
between the summer and winter, they do go
Is
through
this freezer
shifts.
as big as the other one?
Now, some adaptations that they have shorter forearms and hind legs than other ground squirrels. They also have sharp claws and soft pads on the undersides of their hands, which allow them to manipulate food and dirt. Their heads and ears are rounded,
In some ways, we might
and their
be
tails
able
are
to
relatively
small
short compared to other squirrels. And I'm assuming
You know what I'm
that
trying to
shorter tail is to help them reduce heat loss. And these guys do hibernate. And they are the only ground squirrel species that lives
Did we
in
throw one
Alaska.
away a long time ago or something?
You either used it or threw it away. I didn't find any more.
I know. That's what I was.
Didn't find any.
Give me a second. Having some issues. But when am I not?
And I've got it so that vegetables are in one of those crates.
What was that?
Vegetables are in a crate. So they're not spread.
Next up, we're going to be talking about the crab eater
I
seals.
suggest that we,
And the walnuts.
except maybe for meatballs, use it up and don't buy more.
That's fine.
You know what I mean? And then we make a decision on, like, one package of frozen corn is enough.
So these
We're different
guys
than we were
are a pretty
25
big seal.
when we bought that freezer. We're a different family today.
These guys are going to be found on the pack ice, not on the continent itself. And they're going to actually breed on the pack ice, and they're going to be molting on the pack ice.
They're grown up and gone.
They're one of the most abundant of the seals in the Southern Ocean, and they're probably the most numerous of all of the world's larger animals apart from humans. Interesting. They move from pack ice to pack ice and are active, pretty active in passive movements on the ice
I'm kinda
floes.
thinking maybe we need one more freezer. Like in the living room or the dining room.
Now, these
Not a big
guys
one.
are, unfortunately,
Where we can put the
they are taken.
not today, but
They are taken by
A small chest freezer.
crab seals or crab seals,
all upright.
by
if it's
leopard
used.
seals, and most of the adults may actually have scars on their bodies from
Buying a big one when they want to get rid of that one, and I didn't want theirs.
Yep.
they are going to be
Pies.
taken by leopard seals.
Charlie didn't particularly care for pot pies, so we never ate them.
Now they're going to be feeding on krill,
I'll tell you what, I like
and that's where they
pot
get the
pies
name
heated in the
krill.
oven. I don't care for them necessarily heated in the microwave.
And it's a very important part of their meal. So, and they have special adaptations that allow them to take in seawater, like a whale would, and then strain out the krill.
The pot pie said 30 to 32 minutes. I did it 25. And we set the timer for another 5 for the pie, so it went 30.
Okay, we are at 58 minutes. If you have questions, now is the time to get them out so I can see them. Remember, I need your questions because we are doing a Q&A on January 5th. So I need those questions, or it's going to be a very interesting Q&A. So leave your questions in the comment sections of videos. Make sure they are PG. I don't want to get in trouble.
Interesting. When they do a marriage, they do 2 records.
So,
The bride's
Carol,
and the
I
groom's
am
record.
closing
Yeah.
Same
live.
date, same place. But it
I will see everybody on Friday at 6, as far
who
as I
his
know.
parents are, who her
See
parents
ya
are.
laters.